What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Don from Defion Productions here rocking a solo trip tonight as Troy is off for the evening. It's me, Don, the hardest working nobody in Bitcoin. Talking Bitcoin this week. Last week we talked some politics. We talked a lot of politics, actually. This week we're going to jump back into the markets. They're a little bit more enticing and exciting than they were last week. We've had a little bit of movement the last couple of days. Let's talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about pricing wise. We got Bitcoin sitting right a little bit above 64,000. We were last week and probably in the last 3 to 4 days prior to that, we're hovering around 57, 58,000 at the bottom of this range that we've been trading in since the ETFs launched. And we did hit 65 briefly earlier today. In Bitcoin, down a little bit at this point, up 11% the last week. Ethereum trading at just a shade under 3,400, around 33.9, up 9.37% in the last week. Troy's favorite altcoin besides Ethereum, Solana, is at $156. Up 10.25%. The markets are doing relatively well, all things considered. The market cap of crypto is at 2.35 trillion. The Fear and Greed Index that we like to monitor to see where the sentiment of the market is at is sitting at 58, which is neutral. Last week we were in the 20s. It was really, really extreme fear. Last week. So we're right in the middle now. I'm thinking that we're probably going to be seeing relatively soon a leg up, potentially past the all-time high. I don't know. I think 100K is still potentially in the cards before the end of the year. We talked. It's wild, Rich. We talked politics last week on our podcast, and then a couple days later, we almost had an extremely major political event. I mean, it's still a big political event. An assassination attempt is definitely qualifies as a major political event. But I mean, it was literally milliseconds away from being life altering for how we see things in the world, at least in the short to intermediate term. We no pun intended, dodged a bullet. So yeah, we had that happen.
A little bit different conversation this week if things would have been different.
Yeah, much different. Yeah, and ironically enough, markets, not just Bitcoin and crypto, but traditional markets, equities, have been running this week, which is kind of weird. You have an assassination attempt, and typically markets would be spooked and would retrace, but it's kind of outside of tech stocks. Tech stocks took a beating today. Actually, I'll take a look right now because I'll update that. The tech sector has actually been receding a little bit the last couple of days. The Dow had a huge day yesterday. It was up around 700 points. Today it was up about 243. So the last 2 days, the Dow has seen a 1,000-point increase. But the NASDAQ was down almost 3% today. 512 on the NASDAQ, down to the downside. And that makes up a lot of tech stocks. So there seems to be some sector rotation into more stable and conservative stocks. I don't know how to really read into that, but that's just kind of where we are. In regards to some news with Bitcoin specific, we do have the Bitcoin conference coming up in Nashville next week, July 25th to the 27th. And we have some pretty decent names outside of crypto who will be keynote speakers at this conference. You got your regular Michael Saylors who will be speaking, your Kathy Woods who have spoke at prior conferences, no big deal. Robert F. Kennedy, who did speak last year, is also speaking. We also have Edward Snowden, who will be speaking by Zoom because he can't touch foot in the country, but he will be speaking by Zoom. Russell Brand will also be speaking in the big name that'll be speaking, which as we alluded to a little while ago, was almost a couple centimeters away from not being able to be there. Donald J. Trump will be speaking at Bitcoin 2024 as well. Um, Currently, as we are filming this on July 17th, the Republican National Convention is going on. J.D. Vance should be speaking potentially now. He's speaking in prime time, so I would assume he's either speaking now or relatively soon. Trump's VP pick, and tomorrow night, Thursday night, will be Trump's official acceptance for the Republican nomination. He will be speaking at the Republican National Convention, and then next week, he will also be speaking at the Bitcoin convention. And on that note, I'm going to talk about some news that's been circulating on Twitter the last 24 hours that has a little bit to do with Trump, I guess you could say, in Bitcoin. So we can tie those things together. One of the biggest anti-Bitcoiners for the last decade, Jamie Dimon. He's done a lot of TV time, especially on CNBC, talking down about Bitcoin, calling it a pet rock, saying it has no intrinsic value, saying that it's going to go to zero. All these negative things about Bitcoin. Rumor is he is evolving that stance, and he is open-eared to the Bitcoin conversation. And there is a rumor that I've seen today. I don't know if it broke before today, but I definitely saw a lot of it being mentioned on X today, was that Donald Trump is seriously considering Jamie Dimon for a cabinet position. And one of the reasons is because of his changing his tune on his anti-Bitcoin stance. Trump has done a lot of Bitcoin talk at rallies. Just about every rally that he's done in the last couple of weeks, he's mentioned Bitcoin. And personally, this is just my opinion, not necessarily fact, but this is just how I feel. I think choosing to bring in Vivek Ramaswamy after he dropped out of the race for the Republican nomination a couple of months ago, and allowing him to, I guess, orange pill Trump to some extent, has definitely paid a lot of dividends for the Bitcoin community in regards to a candidate speaking as positively about Bitcoin as he is. And because of that, it has caused a shift and a pivot on the other side, on the Democrat side, which has been very anti-Bitcoin. And for the last 3 years, regulatory-wise and through the SEC and Gary Gensler, has made things very difficult for the crypto and Bitcoin space. And they've changed that stance and just about let go of every case that they've had, or they're definitely not coming as hard as they were before in their rhetoric and their speech. And there's even those on the Democrat side who are voicing a pro-Bitcoin and pro-crypto stance, whereas that was very rare even 3 to 6 months ago. So that's a pretty big deal. Mark Cuban had a really good tweet, which I want to read because I thought it was really good. He had an opinion on this whole conversation that I'm embarking upon with Donald Trump and Bitcoin. So I'll read it. It's a 2-part tweet. Part 1. Here is a contrary opinion on the emergence of Silicon Valley support for former President Trump, which, like all my opinions on here, probably won't be popular. It's a Bitcoin play. Not because the former president is a far stronger proponent of crypto. That's nice. But doesn't really impact the price of crypto. It makes it easier to operate a crypto business because of the inevitable and required changes at the SEC. What will drive the price of BTC is lower tax rates and tariffs, which, if history is any guide, and it's not always, it will be inflationary. Combine that with the global uncertainty as to the geopolitical role of the USA and the impact of the US dollar as a reserve currency, and you can't align the stars any better for BTC price acceleration. Part 2. How high can the price go? Way higher than you think. Remember, the market for BTC is global, and the supply has a final limit of 21 million BTC with unlimited fractionalization. Keep that in mind as you consider what happens if because of geopolitical uncertainty and the decline of the dollar as the reserve currency, BTC becomes a safe haven globally, which means that BTC could be what countries and all of us look to buy as a means to protect our savings. Crazy? It's already happening in countries facing hyperinflation. And if things really go further than we can imagine today, and I'm not saying they will, just that it has a possibility somewhere above zero, that BTC becomes exactly what the Maxis envision, a global currency. So you have Donald J. Trump on the Republican side, the face of the Republican Party, Mark Cuban, who's been, I would say, I think Rich, you would agree, Cuban's probably been more liberal, more left, right? So you got two guys.
Agreed. Yep.
You agree? Agree? Yep.
Yep.
So you got two guys on opposite ends of the political spectrum and the political aisle speaking in terms of, and I'll use Cuban's words. I won't put words in his mouth. Talking about Bitcoin as a global reserve currency, as a safe haven asset. And again, these are words that Larry Fink used. These are words that many other billionaires are starting to put into their vernacular when they talk about Bitcoin, which, it first it starts slow and then it goes fast. We saw the rapid price appreciation when the ETF started trading. We saw the rapid the price appreciation when the rumor was there that they were going to be approved. Then we saw them be approved and traded, and the rapid price appreciation there. And we've kind of been stagnant. It's been kind of boring for about, we're in July, 3 to 4 months. I mean, we've really been in a 60K ish Bitcoin zone, which is nuts, because if you were here for the bear market, like I was, like Troy was, and many of you that may be watching this, we sat through watching Bitcoin hit that peak of 69K and recede all the way back into the teens. I mean, we were doing this podcast at a $15,000 to $20,000 Bitcoin, right? And we did a whole podcast in the 2023 time frame where Bitcoin was in the 20, and then we got excited when it hit 30 price range, and here we've been just sitting 12 to 18 months later in the 60s for 3 to 4 months. So envision what things are going to look like 12 to 18 months from now. We've been talking like this, but we're going to be talking about 6-figure numbers of Bitcoin. There's potentially a time frame in the future, in the not too distant future, where we'll be talking about a boring 105, 110K Bitcoin that's just been sitting there for 2 or 3 months, and we're waiting for it to do something. That's the future that we're going towards, and that's this cycle. And you think about cycles beyond this, the 2028 halving, 2032 halving, and how 2028's 4 years from now, 2020 or 2032 is 8 years from now. I mean, it's not that far. Trump's first presidency began 8 years ago. I mean, Biden's began 4. You snap your fingers and that time goes by, and those are 2 cycles. And look at what we've done in the last 2 cycles of Bitcoin. You're talking about single digits of triple digits of Bitcoin into 4 digits, into 5 digits, and then this cycle we'll see 6 digits, and then a cycle or 2 before we see 7. I mean, math does math. So it's kind of crazy. And one of the things, going on to the next thing that I want to talk about, one of the rumors of what has been suppressing the price during this downslide from the mid 60s into the high 50s, where we kind of bottomed out at, was the Mt. Gox coins being redistributed. And British Hodl had a really good tweet today in the morning that kind of encompasses kind of what I think and have been thinking about Mt. Gox, of it kind of being a nothing burger in regards to all the stuff that's going on. I'll read his tweet. Mt. Gox is literally distributing Bitcoin to the very people that understood it enough to take the risk to buy it a decade ago. And we think they're just going to dump it. These are the OGs. I predict they hold, and the overall sell pressure is less than 50% of Germany's, and it will be distributed over 6 months. Remember, Mount Gox is not going to the market and hitting market sell on 150K Bitcoin. They're sending them to users who are all and have been for the last 10 years bullish on Bitcoin. So I kind of follow that sentiment. If people are getting back their coins from Mount Gox and they had the conviction to own it in 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014, like they probably understand it much better than somebody that's just getting in 2021, 2022, 2023 because they were here and they owned it and they watched the market do what the market does, and they've probably, if they didn't already know back then, but have done the research because they were hip to the game that early and they understand what they hold and they understand what they're getting back, and they're not going to be as likely as people think to just dump it for fiat, in my humble opinion. Um, I don't know. This would be a good question to ask Troy and what he thinks, but he's not here. So Troy, what do you think? Okay, good talk, Troy.
And I can't help you at all with that.
Yeah,
kind of
you're not gonna really dive in there and. I will speak a little bit more in regards to the Bitcoin conference and what that kind of means for the space. It's a time. It traditionally was. I mean, I've been in this long enough to remember, people going to the Bitcoin conference just held Bitcoin. I mean, it was called the Bitcoin conference, and in 2013, 14, 15, the first couple of Bitcoin conferences, everybody there was Bitcoiners, cyberpunks, libertarians, people that were, F the system people. And the Bitcoin conference has definitely evolved, just as the space has evolved. I mean, you went from Bitcoin being the only coin to then there being Litecoin, Ethereum, a couple other coins, 20, 30, 40 coins, hundreds of coins, thousands of coins, and with the iteration of meme coins now, millions of coins. So the Bitcoin conference is not as much a Bitcoin conference as it is like a crypto conference, I would say. I mean, your speakers that are speaking at Bitcoin conference are overwhelmingly going to be more on the Bitcoin side, but the persons and people that you're going to encounter at these conferences are all over the crypto map. You're gonna see the NFT bros. You're gonna see the Solana bros, the XRP army. You're gonna see all those types of individuals converging on Nashville for this conference, and people feel a certain way about that. Your traditional, old school Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maxis. Some of them have stopped attending the conference because of that. Others will still attend and then, kind of call that stuff out. It reminds me a little bit, Rich, of like politics. You got your crypto people and you got your Bitcoin people. It's kind of like two separate sides of the aisle. And, I've spoken on this topic ad nauseum. Troy is more of a crypto guy, Ethereum, and I'm the Bitcoin maxi, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the toxic ideology of Bitcoin maxi, but I do believe that every other coin outside of Bitcoin will eventually go to zero. I do believe that. I do also believe that in the current space and time that we are living and residing in, that they do hold value, and that you can transfer that value to things that you value, right? I value Bitcoin, so I can transfer that to Bitcoin, or you can sell it for something in the real world that you need or want to indulge in. So, yes, I believe they're all going to zero, and I don't think they have long-term value. They do have value today. Whether I think they do or not, the market does. So, know that if you're out there and you're attending Bitcoin 2024, going to Nashville, that you're going to expect to see all different kinds of walks of life from this space. It's no longer just Bitcoiners, libertarians, and cyberpunks. You're going to see all walks of life, all different stages of their journeys. You'll have your people that really get it, all dialed in, all down the rabbit hole, done their 10,000 hours of research, your Michael Saylors. Then you'll have your people that will go to this conference that literally own no Bitcoin. They may own Solana. They may own, some Pepe Shiba Inu shitcoin. Like, That's what you'll see. That's what you can expect to see at the current iteration of these types of conferences. And I don't necessarily know.
So this is the biggest one, right?
Yeah, this is.
So
Yeah,
my question for you
Sure.
is: you've never had a major politician appear at this before.
um, yes and no. RFK spoke last year. Vivek Ramaswamy spoke last year, and at the time, I mean, technically, you could say RFK is still running for president,
Right.
or I mean, however you feel about that. But at the time, Ramaswamy was actively running for president. So he was
But
one
you
of the
don't
major
have a
names.
lot. I mean, and even Ramaswamy and obviously Trump's, the nominee and everything. So it's, to me, it's a big deal. It's a big deal that whether he's there for votes or not, they all do this. I don't care who your politicians are. He's there because, and even the comments that you said with Mark Cuban, is there a big shift? Is this the big shift that's going to shake it loose from 65 and push it to 100? Is if Trump wins and he makes some promises next week, will he follow through with some of these things? That that, and I guess the other thing is, because it started as a Bitcoin conference, is there a danger that it's like all coins are great? Like what are some of when you think about the politics side of this now? I guess those are the things that you're looking for to hear happen at this conference, right?
There's a lot that you said there, and there's a ton of different ways that I can answer that, and there's even more questions to be asked by some of the questions that you asked. I'll start with the obvious when we talk about like Trump speaking at this conference and what it means. It's obviously an enormous deal. Like, you have the potential, and even if he doesn't, he was at one time the leader of the free world. Like, he's the 45th president of the United States. There's only been 45 of these guys. Less than that, because people have, I'm seeing, you know what I mean? Like, they've been there twice. Because I believe there's some earlier presidents that were president and then missed the cycle and were president again. So like for Trump, he'd be 45 and 47. So less than that. So huge deal that somebody of that caliber with that power, whether it's real or perceived, will be speaking at the Bitcoin conference. And not only will it be covered on your traditional X accounts that are Bitcoin and crypto focused, that's going to be aired on NBC, CBS, CNN, Fox News, Newsmax. Every news outlet's going to be at least giving you a snippet of him from that conference. So Bitcoin conference will be on the screen in front of people that it normally wouldn't. So that's huge. Yeah, you also you asked about like sincerity. I don't necessarily know when it comes to Trump. I mean, I've been vocal. I'm not going to hide the fact that I'm not voting in this election because I don't believe that the two choices that we're getting are good enough choices. But what I will say is I'm very intrigued to see how Trump speaks tomorrow night after being shot. I'm hearing a lot of rumblings about behind the scenes conversations people are having, and they're saying that they notice that there's been a change, however slight, in him since that occurred. And as a human being, I mean, he's not a robot. You know what I mean? Like, we can think what we want to think about this guy, but like every time he logs on the internet, and this dude loves to see shit about himself. Like every time he logs on the internet or goes on TV, he sees that image of like his head turning and literally seeing how fast his life could have been over. Like, I don't know how anybody that's not like a serial killer doesn't have that affect him in some way, right? And now how that manifests in what we see is to be debated, but I truly believe, I don't know if you saw, Rich, but I noticed this, and I said something to my friends too. Like the first day of the conference on Monday, I don't know if you saw, like when they first introduced him and he was walking out into the crowd. It's the very first time I can ever remember seeing him. I don't know if you've seen the clip. Like, you can see his face. He's feeling emotion.
Yeah.
And I've never seen emotion on his face ever I can't ever remember seeing him.
Whether you like him or not, or it could be anybody. I feel like if you're in a situation where you realize you could have died, and this is not for it's I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but it's crazy to me the people that think that this was fake or staged, and I those people have kind of like
left the reservation.
They moved back into the bushes, so to speak, because they realized that oh no, this was blah blah blah. And there was a lot of politics on Saturday and Sunday, but put all that aside. I mean, unless you are, I don't know, like the worst person in history, whoever that might be, and I'm not saying it's Trump, but whoever the worst person in history is, that were so conceited that they can't be. I don't know how you could not be affected on a not hearing about that someone wanted to kill you, that you were that close to death, that it doesn't change you, even for just a short period of time. Like, right?
There's a wild dynamic with Trump that I see play out often. I don't know if you're familiar with the All In podcast.
Not specifically, no.
So it's Sachs, David Sachs, Chamath Palahniuk, however the hell you say his name. Like 4 dudes that are all billionaires basically do a podcast, and it's called the All In Podcast. They got like almost 1 million followers on YouTube because it's 4 billionaires just chopping it up every week, so it's kind of cool. 2 of them are conservative. 2 of them were heavy Democrat donors and supporters. They had Trump on the podcast like a month ago. And one of the guys, for sure, has been vocal about his disdain for Trump. And they interviewed him, and it was unedited, talked for an hour and a half, and then they recapped the next podcast, how everybody felt about the podcast. And the one guy that didn't really like him had said that he comes off like, and they had talked also like off camera. Besides, they have off camera and the on camera stuff, and he's like, he just comes off like extremely different than the person that you see out on the camera. Like, he's very likable, he's very like interested in the conversation, not just like trying to get, like, he's very like in tune to what you're saying, and it's almost like it's a different person that you're speaking to when he's not on than it is when you see him on. So it's like, how much of what you see with Trump, and again, I'm not here to support Trump or say, I'm just having a thought experiment, but how much of what we see when he's out there doing his rallies, or he's out there like speaking about, crooked Hillary and all that stuff, how much of that is like almost like an actor acting, because that's what he's been doing for 40 years almost, and like how much of it is actually like real?
Yeah, and I mean, it would have been interesting, because obviously the one thing we know that Biden called him, and they talked,
and it was cordial from everybody's account that was around that conversation.
It's both sides have said that, and it's like there's a lot of people in this country that are upset by that.
Ridiculous,
right? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely
like
ridiculous.
That if we could get back to a place where
what
politics could be cordial, like they were when we were kids.
The perfect move for this, if we didn't live in this wild times that we live in, would be a press conference with the 2 of them sitting down and saying, "Listen," almost like we talked about last week with McCain and Obama. "Listen, ideologically, I vehemently disagree with this man. I don't believe in anything that he believes in policy-wise, but he's a fellow American, and like, just because we don't agree ideologically doesn't mean I want to see this man die, and vice versa. Like, let's take this back to where it needs to be in policies, and not like taking somebody's head off."
I said that.
That would have been a huge moment for us to have that.
I just wish that they both could settle some things down. Most people don't like either one of them, or some.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's very few that are all in on. Most of us that are voting are voting for a party partially because they just don't like the other party. That's been the case for many, many years, and I think, to bring it back around with how I asked you about this conference and just in general and all these things, is that like how we fight in politics is affecting all this financial stuff too. Like, and it just drives me crazy that, like, why can't our politicians just have a serious conversation? There should be some Democrats at that conference, and listening and having an opinion on it, and saying, I like Bitcoin, but I can't stand the shit coins. Like something like we need regulation, something like come out and be part of the conversation instead of just like the Elizabeth what's her face Warren, like that just are against it no matter what, and like belittle something that has potential to be like a major change the way our government does its financing. Like I just feel like there could be something in it if we could get past some of the divisive politics that would, I think, allow these types of conferences actually have more meaning.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see, because I think at this point, I don't want to say it's a given or a lock, but I mean the longer that Biden stays in this race, or just ultimately stays in the race, like the more evident it'll be that Trump will most likely win. I mean, you have CNN, they've totally turned their back on Biden. Like, I mean, it's just I can actually tolerate CNN now, because they're actually, like, the journalism that they're doing is actually like, yeah, like they're calling him out, what they should have been doing for 3 years. But it's like everybody's kind of like trying to push this guy off to the side, and he don't want to do it. So I mean, think about how much of a mess the Republican Party was a year ago, right? Absolute mess, right?
Yep.
And the Democrat Party was pretty united,
Yep.
I would say. And it's completely flip-flopped.
No, and that's the thing that people don't get. I remember that after I don't remember which election it was, but I remember watching the broadcast, and they were like, "Well, the Democratic Party's dead. There'll never be another Democratic president again." I think this was Bush's second election, because the Democrats just had such a terrible, campaign that second time.
Who they run that second time against Bush? I don't remember. Who was the Democratic nominee? Was it
fine.
Kerry? John Kerry.
John Kerry.
John Kerry.
And,
That's what it was,
and the swift boating and all that goofy stuff, that John Kerry was the most boring person they could have put up. They couldn't find anybody. And people were saying, like, who's next in politics for this party? And, well, I guess it's Hillary and all that stuff. But I remember the Democratic parties, and then after the second Obama election, the Republican Party's dead. Actually, the first election, it was the Republican Party's dead. Like, everything moves around. The priorities of the party change. We've seen, obviously, a shift in the Republican Party. I think within the next 10 years, you're going to see a major shift. If they lose the election, it'll be a major shift in the next 4 years. I think that all your major donors to the Democratic Party, this is my prediction, and this will affect, I think, everything. If Biden stays in and they lose by a lot, it's not close. It's like,
if he stays in, there's no way that it's not.
But if he loses
it's not a
like
landslide.
5 swing states and Trump pretty much walks away with it, if that happens, every donor is going to be pointing at all those old guard, and they're all going to be out. The entire Democratic Party leadership will change, and it will go to a much younger.
It's not a bad thing.
No, and I think that's both our parties need those changes from time to time. Anytime anybody's in control for too long, they're more worried about their control than the decisions and what the policies. And we talked about this last week. I want to hear about these policies for these guys. I'd love them to sit down. No interview, just maybe just not even the questions. Just sit down and talk about, like, we got to fix the frickin' country. We got to find some common ground. Like, they could both do it, and it would be good for their politics.
Yeah,
it's never going to ever happen. But
make America great. But what does that like? What does that really look like?
What does that look like to you?
What is that?
Like,
Okay, yeah, the borders are overrun. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Okay, the economy's crazy, inflation's going nuts.
And accept
what
the
are we
fact
gonna
that
do
you
about it?
both are the problem. It's not like one party did all this. They both did
that's
this.
That's my major sticking point with Trump, is his inability to accept responsibility for the mistakes he made during COVID and the fiscal mistakes he made during COVID, which were exacerbated by Biden.
Yeah.
And then Biden just flat out denies that it ever happened, and he claims that he created all these jobs when it was people that actually went back to work that were told to stay home. It's all a sham. Like, it's a complete sham. And until we have, like you said, until we start having real serious conversations about this stuff, we're just going to keep lying to each other, lying to ourselves, and nothing will ever get better.
Yeah,
which is why I refuse to embark on voting, because if I vote, I feel like I'm supporting the circus, and I don't want to go to the circus, so I'm not going to support it.
no, and I agree with that, and that's why it's going to be interesting. Like back to the conference, for example, I'm going to be interesting, like how the Democrats react. When the polling starts to come out, that you've got some independents that are, you've got this percentage of people out there that are interested in Bitcoin and crypto and ATFs and all this stuff, and they're looking at different ways to build wealth because we're all struggling. Whether it's because of our high mortgage rates, or we can't afford a house, or our college loans, or whatever it is, just stagnant salary, in whatever you want to call it, growth in our pay, but everything else is going up. Like, if the Democrats see that, like, will Biden come out all of a sudden is like and adds to his things that he's going to want to do, or if he drops out and someone else comes in, are they to embrace some of these different ideas that a lot of the population is starting to pay attention to? And that to me, it's really interesting. Like, especially since I've been reading a little bit now about this stuff. Just people. You mentioned somebody, so I'll write it down and I'll look it up while you're talking. And you're paying attention to what they're talking about, and it's just interesting to me that. It seems to be we're finally getting to that shift. And if this shift happens, like, is there something specific that, is there one thing that you hope gets said in this conference that is what's the most important thing, like, that you hope happens, I guess?
I feel like it will be a big moment if he mentions global reserve currency back, or either that, which I think that's asking a lot. I don't necessarily think that'll happen. But if he mentions just the idea of backing the US dollar with Bitcoin, that would be enormous. Even if he doesn't necessarily understand that, because I don't know if he really does. I don't know if he can. To be fair to President Trump, I don't know if he really can have the time to understand that. But that's why you have people like Vivek Ramaswamy and others. I don't know if you saw yesterday there was a leak. Trump called RFK.
Yep.
And RFK had a videographer and didn't realize, allegedly. But I mean, I don't think RFK is.
Yeah, I got a lot of problems with RFK. Like, I just
I find myself actually agreeing
not
with a
about
lot
that
of,
specifically,
yeah.
just in general. Like I don't either. If this guy wants to be president of the United States or have influence, and he doesn't know there's a guy with a video camera on, this guy's just disqualified himself in terms of how do you not know that there's a guy standing next to you with a video camera? It wasn't a cell phone. It was like, that was a camera.
Yeah.
Like that guy he knew he was getting videotaped.
Yeah.
And he should have said, hey, it's Donald Trump. Wouldn't you look around and say,
Yeah,
I don't want this to get out, this conversation, that was the point of the
bad.
conversation.
That
Like,
was bad.
I don't know. Like,
I
but
agree
no,
with you
you're
there.
right though. I mean, like, the fact that they're having the conversation is important.
Yeah, and the point of bringing him up is the fact that he's been on the Bitcoin, because he spoke at Bitcoin 2023.
Right.
He's been on the Bitcoin and crypto train for a while, and he speaks relatively decent in relaying an understanding of what he's talking about.
Right.
So, like, Trump was, I guess, I didn't watch I just saw the cliff notes of somebody tweeting it.
Right.
Apparently, he was talking about potentially offering RFK, which I think is a really good idea. No matter how you feel about RFK is not a Republican.
No.
Never been. The Kennedy name is not Republican.
Right.
So for Trump to throw an olive branch out there and even say that to a Kennedy, you got to at least give him credit to be like, all right, like, yeah, MAGA, Republican, but like, he's just like, I'm looking for people that align with what I'm thinking. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat.
Finding people that can help you. And I mean, I wish these presidents, all these presidents, and some of them have, find the people like the person running for president can't know everything about everything. So it's all about who you surround yourself with. I don't care whatever it is, like any business, anybody you work with, your corporation, your president, your prime minister, whoever it is, I don't care what type of organization it is, you can't do everything. If you try to do everything, your company, your country is going to go bankrupt. It's just impossible. You have to have trust in the people. You have to be a good leader and bring in people And you know what? Like, I'd be looking for, like, to me, I've always thought that if I was running for president or when I've liked people, I would like when they would come out and say, this guy is going to be my Secretary of State. This is going to be my guy. This is going to be my foreign affairs advisor. This is going to be by running my military, like my naval. I would like, I want to know who you're thinking of bringing into that White House with you. And that would be easier for me to vote for someone if I said, okay, because the president, at the end of the day, I don't think they do a lot. They do a lot, but when it comes right down to it,
There's not as much power as you think. Yeah,
yes,
I know what you're saying.
there's only so much they can get done. So I want to know that the people running their departments are qualified. And that is, and some presidents have done a great job with that. But I would love it if they told us, like, these are the guys, these are the people that are going to be behind me. Like, if I was a coach, and I'd be like, who's the best? If I was, you coach baseball, like, there's guys out there that are never been head coaches, but man, they're the best pitching coach on the planet. Like, if I was the Yankees coach or whoever it was, I'm like, I want that guy because that guy knows how to develop young pitchers, and that's how I'm going to win the World Series. Like, announce, like, hey, I hired this guy as my coach, and I'm bringing this guy in with me. That's what I want to see from these guys when they're running, and maybe that's the kind of stuff that maybe we'll get next week. I'm not getting enough of that even from the convention that's going on right now.
I think there's never been a better time than right now with the climate politically in our country to reconsider or to go back and take a look at how we used to do things in regards to presidential elections. And the winner was the president and the loser was the vice president of opposing parties. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's how we started. That's how the country was founded. That's how the founding fathers wanted things to be. And then we changed it. I'm actually going to look that up. I'm not going to do it in the middle of the podcast, but I'm wondering when that changed. At some point,
it was
changed.
under the Articles of Confederation when they.
How many
redid
presidents in was that?
Oh, it wasn't very many.
Wasn't very many.
Very early on.
Very early.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, can you imagine? Because I've been thinking, like, how dynamic it would be if like Tulsi Gabbard would have got tapped by Trump, or somebody that hasn't been like a traditional on either side, even if like whoever the Republican nominee was, if they were to pick somebody that was like,
I
more
know
moderate
Mark
Republican.
Cuban would never like run for. It doesn't seem like he would ever run for office, but I would love if like Mark Cuban and a couple of these guys that are very successful in what they do, and they seem to have a good head on their shoulders about the community, and they're not. I mean, Mark Cuban makes a ridiculous amount of money, but he also seems, from all reports that I've ever seen about Cuban, he's a good dude too. Like, he's good to his workers. He's got good ideas. He calls out the politicians when he can. I would love to get like some of these kind of guys and just say, listen, I don't want you to work. You got your own stuff, but could you come in on Mondays for 3 hours and just like do a Zoom call with us, and let's sit down and let's try to think about what are some economic policies that I can put in my first 100 days. Like, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear some like, like I want to hear like, and not this stuff where they're on a golf course or something. I want to be like the guy's got an official role where he's going to advise the president and or the economic council on something. Like, let's try some different shit. Like, because what we're doing is not working, and people are getting less and less interested in this stuff.
Yeah, we have to figure out somehow as a country how to reinvigorate the people in the middle and the fringes that have just been tuning out this ridiculous rhetoric that's being controlled by the 10%, 15% on both sides, right? The hardcore MAGA and the far left progressives, like, those are the loud voices. Those are when you say left or you say liberal, that's what you think of. And when you say, far right conspiracy, you have a certain sect of each side in mind when you say it. But there's so many registered Republicans and registered Democrats that don't identify with either one of those things that you say about the party that they're registered under, and they feel like orphaned. You know what I mean? I mean, a somewhat bad example, I guess, would be like somebody like Elon Musk, who, he tweeted a long time ago, like a picture of himself, like being on the line of like being on the left. And it's like, I didn't move, the line moved. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't,
and I'm not a big Musk fan, but
no,
like,
I'm not
I
either.
agree
That's why I
with
said it was a
that.
bad example.
I agree with that like Like people talk about JFK all the time, and I'm like, JFK today, if he was president today, if you look at his policies,
Republican.
He was Republican all day long.
Yeah.
Like, and to be honest, most of our like George Pataki, who was governor of New York State for what 8 years.
Yep.
He was not a Republican. He was. I mean, he was a Republican, obviously, but
In name.
but in policy wise, he was just, he was pretty much a centrist, and he probably in many ways, like when you think about his, like in some ways his
Had to be
funding
to run the
of
state,
like
though. You have
things
to
that
be.
you would think of that in New York State that were funded. You would have thought those were things that Democrats would have funded. He funded things better as a Republican a governor, than some of our Democratic governors have. And so yeah, I agree. I think that we need some, a lot of our liberals are liberals in name only.
The father, Como,
Yeah,
wasn't bad. He wasn't a bad governor.
no,
He's
I
pretty
mean,
decent.
There's some interesting things about him.
Well, the family
in general, I think he
governed well.
He governed pretty well. There's a lot of people complain about some things that happened. Some of the changes in the way New York did things, but he was, he was good for the state in my opinion. I liked him, and I was kind of surprised he never ran for president. To be honest, I was kind of surprised he didn't run because I thought he was a guy that kind of people kind of liked. Like people, he was a likable guy. He seemed to get it, and he was the kind of guy I think that would have brought in. I think more of these guys should pick a couple guys from the other party to be in their party, like be in their.
I liked
somebody that will say, "Man, I don't agree with that policy." And most of them are yes people. I would love it if they'd have one person that kind of tells them when they're wrong.
It's controversial to people when I say this, but like in my lifetime of 46 years, I think the best president that I've ever seen was Reagan. And I don't necessarily think all of his policies were great or all the things he did, like Iran-Contra, were really great per se. But the way he approached the office of president, I thought was way better than anybody else that I've seen, because it wasn't about him. It was just about what he felt needed to get done. It wasn't like, oh, I'm the president.
Right.
Look at me. I'm going to do a bunch of shit.
I disagree.
Just to do it.
I loved Reagan
did
at the
things
time.
that he felt
Yeah.
were appropriate and right for the country.
I'm a big
not for
Reagan fan because not necessarily of all his policies, because I think trickle-down economics doesn't work, and I don't like what he did with some union busting of the airlines, like which led to some other problems for unions. And there's some things, but I also like the fact that he really believed in a strong military that was an actually strong military. It wasn't just buying shit. It was about no, we're going to invest in R&D. We're going to have really, really good. And everybody knew Star Wars was never going to work. But the investment in research and development, every company that is successful spends money in R&D, because you never know what you're going to invent that's going to be the next thing that makes you rich. And Star Wars and those types of things, that was, fine. Russia, China, we're going to outspend you because we have a huge GPA and we can afford to invest in these rockets and these defense systems and all these things that also the people liked, because it felt like those systems were the goal was to keep us safe. People were very concerned about nuclear weapons. So he's like, we're going to try to design weapons that will protect us from nuclear weapons. And people kind of liked that. Whether it was a scam or not, I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, Reagan, I'm sure for his time, he was probably pretty racist and stuff like that, whatever. But I think he really liked the country, and people liked him because he seemed like a nice guy. Maybe because it was an actor.
But he also preached the consequences of big government.
Yes.
One of the best things he ever said was the scariest words you can ever hear is, "I'm from the government. I'm here to help you."
Yeah.
He would preach, like, if we keep going down a certain path and you keep wanting government to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's going to be a problem.
And as popular as he was,
happened.
Had one of the highest, he swept his reelection except for one state.
Yeah, it was a landslide.
A landslide. Nobody's ever done that. And more importantly, though, he didn't then say, I get to do everything I want. He still worked with Democrats, and that's why I think he was popular and was able to win states that were traditionally Democrat, because he would sit down with Tip O'Neill, Speaker of the House at the time, and they would say, I want this, you want this, will you take this? Well, I'll take this. And that was the last time I think we really had a House Speaker and a president that actually liked each other, that wanted to work together, make sure they both got a win out of it. They were happy with the tie.
There's an argument.
They were happy with the tie.
I agree with you
yeah.
for sure, but I think there's an argument for Clinton and Gingrich on some level because they were able to balance a budget, which is
for a while. Then Gingrich turned into Gingrich a little bit.
He did, but they definitely were able to do some things that haven't been able to be done since.
During that when they got the surplus.
Not as good as Tip O'Neill and
that's probably the
Reagan,
second
I would
best
agree.
in my lifetime that I can
but that's
remember.
the last time I would say
right?
that.
Probably that was the last time, and then other things happened, which
it's been a mess since.
Started the division of our politics back then, obviously. But and I think like some of these types of things that you guys talk about every week when you come in, are the divisiveness of all these things. I think is just reflective because of the divisiveness of our government and our politics in this country.
Take Troy for example. 20-something that's never known in his lifetime of paying attention to politics anything but serious division between being Republican and Democrat. I mean, I growing up, like my mother and father were Democrats growing up, and now they're way on the other side. They're MAGA Republicans. You know what I mean? Think about that shift going from Democrat to MAGA Republican, and just like the political divide is just it's a Grand Canyon sized, and I really don't legitimately know what can be done to fix it, because if we don't fix it, if we keep going on this path, like what happened on Saturday will eventually happen.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we don't. It happened before. Look at the '60s. Look at the amount of people that were assassinated in this country in the '60s. Like high, powerful people. People forget. Like the '60s, it was bad. I mean, like not just a president. I mean, his brother.
MLK,
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Just MLK. Like it just lots of political unrest in that, and we didn't even have the prevalence of guns in the country that we have now. Like and it's definitely really scary, and and you worry about your children and their children, and just the ability to just raise your family, and being able to do it in a comfortable way, so they're not working 5 jobs, and they can afford a home someday. They're not living in your basement for the rest of your life or something like that. Like this stuff. Again, I think it's going to take. It's going to take this a centrist celebrity. It's going to just take that person, and they may be a celebrity because they're just so likable as a politician, but it's going to have to be this like very centralist person that can understand that's going to be so popular that they can force both sides, and they have to be smart enough to handle that political machinery. And I think most people probably don't even want to be involved in politics if they're that smart.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want to vote, and I think you're a pretty smart guy.
No,
you don't want to be involved in it either.
No, I don't, and it sucks because like I remember like how cool it was when I voted in 2008, and then seeing where we've gone as a country, and just like I don't want to participate in idiocracy and just like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to come about. And then like I think it's this election more than anyone since 2008 for sure. I just feel like it's a complete spit in the face that we are getting a repeat of a 2020 election of 2 guys that are not extremely popular in either of their parties, let alone the overall populace. Like Biden is obviously not popular in the Democrat Party. And it's tough with Trump having such a stranglehold on the Republican Party, but there's a pretty big contingent of never Trumpers and Lincoln Project people that are Republicans that are just like, I'm not voting Trump. Like you've never seen that in parties like that, right? I mean,
well, you're seeing it now with the Democrats. There's a lot of people that are
not
voting for Biden.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like you're seeing it on both sides. So
until the parties realize, oh crap, we've lost our base, or a high percentage of our base, and they're either staying home or they're going to vote for the other guy or gal. Until they learn that, and it really affects their bottom line. And I hate to say it, I think it comes down to affecting their power, their chip in the game. And I think that's the problem. There's these people, and they're behind the scenes, and we kind of know their names. We see them once in a while, but like it's they're the folks that are and some of them are the politicians that could do things. And it's going to be interesting for me. We talked about this already last week. Is like, you know, you know, when is a few more high-ranking Democrats, and if they're going to do it, it has to be soon. Say, this is over. Go home, go home and drink lemonade on your porch in a rocking chair.
Peter Schiff, who's a pretty high-ranking Democrat today,
Yep.
came out and said it's time to step down, and he's piped up there with Pelosi in California, and he's going to have a race in Cali.
I'm waiting to see. Pelosi still, even though she's not the speaker anymore, she still has a ridiculous amount of clout. And not
She
that
hasn't
she's
directly
she's
answered
no
the-
young chicken either. But
She hasn't directly answered the question.
No,
she diverts.
she kind of skipped it, and she wanted to get through the weekend, and then now all of a sudden, and I think a lot of them shut up, and as well as they should have. I thought I did respect the fact that the Democrats pulled their ads for the weekend. They suspended all their ads about Trump in the aftermath of what happened, and that shows a little bit of class. And I mean, and it's fine once the convention starts. The game's on. The halftime's over. We're back playing the game, and they should be playing the game. We're all playing the game again this week. So, but take 48 hours and just go home and hug your kids and be thankful that it wasn't you. That type of thing. And I don't know, but I think I definitely think that there are a few more voices, and how many do we need? And maybe a few more polls. Maybe they need a few more polls to come out. I don't know. Now he's got COVID supposedly or whatever he has. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the state of this political arena is gonna be. I mean, the way that we're trending, Trump's gonna win, and then right now he wins. There's no more elections for him to win after that.
No, because he's lame duck already.
Yeah, so
and it's just a question if he can do anything depending on what else he has control of. Yes, he has the Supreme Court, but that doesn't affect you with your bill writing. But if he doesn't have the House and the Senate, we're just going to have another 4 years of stagnant bullshit anyway, because nothing gets through. There's only so many executive orders you can pass. There's a lot of things that don't fall under quality. So a lot of the things that are supposedly in Project 25 or Agenda 47 or whatever you want to call those things, if half of them are true, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's only so many of those things you can do. Like one of the things that the president that Trump tweeted, I believe he said, is that I want the whole country to go back to paper ballots and you can only vote on election day. Well, that's a states thing. He always talks about being a strong states guy, so he can't tell Pennsylvania how to run their elections. He can't. And what do you tell the military guys that are in Venezuela right now? They can't vote by mail. The guys in the military can't vote. So it's one of those things. He can say whatever he wants. We're gonna move the moon, but he can't. There's certain things that he doesn't have control of. He can say that, he can get votes out of it, but I wish the populace understood that there are certain things that he can say whatever you want, but he can't do those things because he can't do those things if he doesn't have control of the House and the Senate.
Like build the wall and make Mexico pay for it.
That was people fell for that. And just the fact Bill Burr did that whole skit about them. He says, I've driven from Texas to California. I've driven Route 10 or whatever I think that's Interstate 10. He's like, it's a 2-day drive. We're building a wall that's a 2-day drive going 80 miles an hour. He's like, get out of here. That we're not building that. And no one was paying for that. And you're like, we couldn't pay for that. Nobody's paying for that. But it sounded good. And that's what they do. But all politicians, I'm not picking on Trump. They all do it. They all do that. We did it again. Talked about politics too much.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stage of the cycle that we're at. I mean, especially this election cycle where there's so much uncertainty. I mean, we literally in 1 week we almost had one ousted by the party, and another one ousted by a bullet in the same week.
And that's why I think everything's kind of in a weird spot. The Dow, like you said, isn't moving. It went up a little bit. It came back down.
Dow did.
It's been a pretty good couple months, though.
Yeah.
But it's now it's not crashing, but it's not. It's kind of leveled off. Like you said, you've been stuck with Bitcoin at what, 65 something for.
No, it's been in the low 60s. It actually went down to 58 last week, and then actually after the shooting on Saturday, it started to move back up past 60. It was weird. Really weird.
It would have been obviously,
Because Bitcoin
everybody
and crypto
it-
moves at
right.
24/7 market, so you see that before you see the Dow and all
I mean,
that
if,
stuff.
if
but
Trump if Trump had been killed or seriously injured, like
Black Swan event,
the
yeah, it's a
the
Black
stock,
Swan event.
yeah, like it would have been, like
Black Monday,
Yeah,
stocks would have opened. Yeah,
yeah.
you
they might have just said don't even open the stock market. They might have just closed it and not opened it, which is what they've done in situations because they don't want those. They did that with 9/11.
I
They literally
don't-
closed the stock market.
I don't think we're out of the like. It actually genuinely makes me nervous the next couple of months, on both sides, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Biden's necessarily safe either. I don't think. I mean, the ineptness of that event that Trump was at all the way around. I don't know if they're necessarily going to duplicate that with Biden, but I mean, if somebody wants to get to you, they're looking.
Well,
it looks like they can. I mean,
The funniest thing that I've seen is people that they always joke about, like, oh, the government does this and the government's behind this and the government's behind that. And, like, the government couldn't stop a 20-year-old from climbing onto a roof with a gun. Like, so I don't have people have a lot more faith in the American government than they really should. And that's just a blatant example of, man, who dropped the ball on that? Like, whether and it's and I did an event once and interacted. I interacted once when Hillary Clinton was running for Senate and she came to Niagara Falls and I was at my facility that I was running at the time, and I interacted with. I talked to her once for 2 seconds. I talked to the Secret Service people. Like, I talked to them more than I talked to my wife that week. I mean, I literally was, show me every exit. Where are the emergency? Who can, how do we turn off the smoke alarms in case someone decides to set off a smoke? I mean, they had a list of things. We spent hours and hours and on, and then they were there, and they had, like, I mean, believe me, like, and this was a very controlled facility. And it was like,
Did she had Secret Service at the time because
she
of
did
Bill?
because she was the former first lady, so she had a group of 4 people.
Oh, so she still gets them. Okay.
she still had
because
them,
of
yeah.
Bill. Because of Bill.
Because of Bill, and also at this point she was running for office too. So, but they were Secret Service. That was her Secret Service detail. It's like the movie with Nicolas Cage where he's protecting the former first lady. Like, so it wasn't like 50 guys like and gals like Trump's supposed to have or whatever number he has or Biden has. But, like, man, they asked me every question. They vetted me. They did a background check on me to make sure. Like, I was asked, like, how do you feel about the former first lady? Like, they asked me that question politically. They did. Like, they said that's their job. Like, and my concern is that like, man, that's just a major. How can you still be dropping that ball? That's a scary thing for any president or any elected official. That's why you don't catch me going into that stuff.
Yeah, it's just sad. It's just a sad situation all the way around that we have to see that happen. And there's people there. The firefighter that died aside in that family alone, just them, but like the people that were there that will be traumatized from that event that didn't get shot, but saw somebody die or saw the president get shot at, and it may affect them from ever.
Or the firefighter, he claimed it was on his wife.
He's on his family,
his family member, and it's like, so that person's going to deal with survivor's guilt because they
Yeah.
survived, but he didn't, and the 2 other people that got shot, and like the father. I mean, I don't know anything about the family of the young man, but like, it was his gun, and his son's dead. He's got to live with that. He's got that's like, I don't care what his politics are. He's still a father. Like, he's a father, and that was his son, and he has to get up every day and look in the mirror and wonder if he could. What did he miss, right? And that comes back around. Like, is I'm really hoping that this has been a life-changing experience for Trump. I always, a lot of people give Biden a pass, and you give Biden a pass because of the death of his son. maybe this will soften him and recognize that, man, I could have been dead. And maybe
Yeah, I'm
maybe
very,
he'll do this for the right reasons now. Or
yeah, I'm
whatever. A lot of
very
people don't
very
think that he is.
intrigued to see how the verbiage, how he delivers his
Yeah, that speech
speech tomorrow night.
it's gonna be
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how he chooses to deliver what he's going to say, and if he mentions anything about how it affected him, which I think would be a big deal
Do you
because I
think
don't
he'll
think
end his
he's.
speech with "Don't trust, verify"?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
You could sue him. He stole your
Haven't
line.
patented
If he-
Haven't patented it yet. It would be amazing if Trump said any. Don't
I'm
trust,
calling you.
verify.
I'm gonna call you on the phone if he
Yeah,
says
it would be
that.
amazing. It would stop the internet if he did that. It'd stop Bitcoin Twitter if he said that for sure.
That'd be hilarious.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, since we said that we were going to talk politics this week and just Bitcoin and crypto, and we spent 30 minutes talking politics,
We got to make sure Troy's here next week. We can't, and I'm gonna not bring a mic. I'll shut my mouth.
because Troy is not the politics guy. Don't trust, verify, ladies and gentlemen. See you next week.